ever since my diagnosis, I've probably been working harder than ever before, really. I'm shooting a lot of pictures because there are certain things I want to get into the archive before I'm no longer able to do it.
Hello, I'm Catherine Fairweather, and welcome to The Third Act, brought to you by Auriens, the gold standard in later living. I'm thrilled to introduce Martin Parr, who's unique as a photographer, taken seriously in the art world, but who enjoys enormous popular appeal. His distinctive, colour-saturated documentary-style images are an amused and affectionate look at aspects of modern life and consumerism, and have helped define what it is to be British. I've been invited to the Martin Parr Foundation in Bristol, which supports and protects the archives of British-focused photographers, to meet the man in person on the eve of the publication of his latest book, Utterly Lazy and Inattentive. This landmark visual memoir tells his own story in his own words and in 150 superlative images. Martin, it's wonderful to be here in your amazing foundation. I can't quite get over it, but this seems like a very good moment to be talking to you, actually. The biography, Martin Parr biography, comes out in a couple of months, and we have this wonderful film, I Am Martin Parr. I found it a visual extravaganza, which is, I guess, a hallmark of your style. How long did it take to film that?
It wasn't so long. I guess we had filming days, maybe 8 at the most. We had one trip up to the north where we went back to Hebden Bridge, New Brighton, and then Blackpool, which are places I'd been to earlier in my career where they've been quite significant. And then we had some interviews here. They came across when I was doing photo sessions we do here, of doing portraits of people in the studio. And then Lee Schulman, who is the first sort of feature film he made, he previously had been, creative for the advertising industry. And we get to know each other, liked each other, and then he suggested, well, why don't we make a film? And I thought, well, why not? Because, I know him, I trust him, and that's really what happened. Mm. And by the way, I must just tell you that the biography is called Utterly Lazy and Inattentive, which is from my school report. So I didn't do very well at school, academically weak. I scraped past the 11 plus and got into grammar school. But the remark by my French teacher has become the title of my biography, which I'm very happy with. It's a brilliant phrase.
Yeah, absolutely. So from as usual, from failures, look at the success.
Well, as you know, many photographers are dyslexic and, they have all kinds of problems, but the one thing they're good at is photography.
So when did you realise you were going to be a photographer? When did that all start? What triggered it?
Way back, because my grandfather was a very keen amateur photographer. So I was brought up in Surrey, and often I would go up to Yorkshire where he lived for summer holidays. And he basically introduced me to photography. He was a very keen amateur photographer himself. He was a fellow of the Royal Photographic Society. And we went out shooting together. He lent me a camera, shot this, processed the film, made prints. And by about the age of 13 or 14, I decided I wanted to be a photographer. And I've never looked back.
If you weren't a photographer, what would you be, do you think?
Well, I did entertain briefly some ideas about being an actor, but I knew I didn't have it. Football, no. So I guess one of the things I do like to do is to deal. I think I might have been an antique dealer because I like the idea of buying and selling. And in fact, we do this here at the foundation with photographic books. Photographic books is a very volatile market. Either books are going up in price or down in price. Rarely do they stay at their actual published price. So, we play the game of dynamic pricing here at the foundation for our bookshop.
Oh, do you? And you're also an obsessive collector.
That's right.
I've noticed that about you. In fact, in Arles, where we bumped into you, you were sort of scouting and scouring the banquettes in the market.
That's right. Yeah, no, I've always been a collector. So from the outset, I did my first natural history museum in the cellar at our house in Chessington before we moved to Ashtead. And ever since then, I've been collecting everything from stamps, coins, books, ephemera, Saddam Hussein watches, Martin Luther King ephemera. But now I've settled down and just started to collect in a much bigger way other British photographers, because I believe they're very underrated, and the foundation here really is a platform for them to have their work shown and displayed. And then when people wanted to do exhibitions about British photography, we can be a very good place to come. We have all the magazines, we have Creative Camera, we have all the things like Macmillan, Sunday Times spreads, and all the books and exhibitions that have ever been done about British photographers. So we think of ourselves as being a research resource, and many people now come, and if they're researching something, we can help them, find the books they want or look at the books, because we have basically most post-war British photography books and magazines.
Well, I mean, it's an amazing legacy, and I do want to go back to that. But you've just reminded me of something. You're talking about the foundation being a celebration and a collection of British photographers and British photography. What is being British?
Well, I guess I'm British. I'm a British photographer. I've done very well. I'm very lucky. But I'd say in Britain, photography is still underappreciated. You have to remember that the Tate only got round to showing photography in 2004 when they did their big exhibition on photography. And previous to that, they said the only way you get photographs in the collection if you're an artist using photography. Previous to that, of course, all the people like the Pompidou and MoMA, New York, and all the other big museums had started to collect photography. So we were very late on the game. And I still think there's a sort of natural bias in this country against photography. People don't quite trust it. So, for example, when I do shows in Paris, I get a lot more response, a lot more reviews than I would do if I do a show here in London. And that to me is quite fascinating. So I want to try and make a contribution to the redistribution of people's attention to the achievements of British photographers, of which there are many. We have great British photographers. You can see here we're surrounded by the books they've all produced. And it's interesting. I mean, when, for example, Don had the show at Tate Britain, it got a massive number of people.
They couldn't get over it.
Yeah. And it just is a great demonstration of how popular photography can be if you do it properly. And apart from Don, I don't think there's been a one-person show of a living British photographer at the Tate.
Well, yeah, you're right.
They don't mind a few dead ones.
They don't mind a few dead ones.
Yeah.
When I was in India a couple of months ago, the photographer I was working with said that the most influential photographer of the modern era in India was you.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
That was interesting.
That's nice.
Yeah. Because I see you as a very British photographer, capturing the essence of British life. And he said, no, it was the palette, absolutely, the saturated colours, and the internal and external dualities, so the tension that you set up between what the viewer is seeing and what the subject is feeling. And the sense that often your pictures are in crowds, and yet these people are seeming so alienated from their own environment. They're in their own bubble. And that dynamic, I think, is what makes your photographs so interesting. Do you feel that's to be true? And is it something that's conscious, or is it innate? I mean,
it's just something I built up. I mean, first the palette, I started out as a black and white photographer, and then in 1983, I started shooting in colour, and I've never gone back to black and white since then. And back in the day, I had a medium format camera with colour negative film, with flash, and you get these very intense colours, and they were very reminiscent of commercial photography from the same period. So in a sense, I sort of stole the palette of commercial photography and applied it to documentary. That's probably one reason why people sort of remember the work that I've done. But I hadn't twigged that about India. I've done many talks in India. I've been there a good few times. I love India. It's a great place to photograph. But that's very nice to hear. Thank you for passing that on. And,
I mean, your subject is the curious British people. You do a lot of travelling, so you've certainly been around, small world, you went everywhere, and you observe people at their leisure. But do you think the British are more peculiar, more curious than anyone else?
Good question. I mean, probably no, but, I've sort of specialised on, the English curiosities, their hobbies, their interests and such like, and the way they gather together, and this sort of hangover from the past, which I found very well demonstrated in my recent Cunard cruise, where, people could just buy their way to the sort of aspiration, the afternoon tea with waiters with white gloves, dressing up for dinner, doing all these things that used to be associated with the upper class, which now you can just buy your way into. And I guess, because a lot of people can't have that access, this is one way they can do it, by going on a Cunard cruise.
Yeah, it must have been manna for you, that
Yes,
cruise.
I was very happy to do it. I had been on a short cruise in America many, many years ago. And also we went down on the Orient Express, which is another classic example of, the British Raj sort of still living and thriving, because that really is an indulgent, crazy train ride you go on.
So you're still travelling?
I am, but I have myeloma, which is a form of cancer now. So that's slowed me down a bit, but I'm still going out there. I'm still doing, yesterday I was at the food fair in Bristol. I just can't stop shooting.
Why?
Because I just have this desire to go and record and build up the archive. I guess one of the things I acknowledge as my legacy is not only the foundation here, but, the archive that I've got about my time in Britain over the last 55 years. So, I want to keep going. I want to do a book about Bristol. So I'm always looking for more Bristol pictures. And, I'm just out there. I'm shooting because I can't help myself. It's just what I have to do.
Do you ever leave your camera behind when you go anywhere?
Not really, because I've always got even now I've got my phone with me, which is, once you've got up to something like an iPhone 15, the quality is so good. And often when the light is poor, it'll do a better image than your DSLR. So I've always got something with me.
Well, in the film, it says that you never go on holiday, in fact.
No, I have working trips. Susie has a holiday at the same time, and I have a working trip.
Yeah, you're drawn to these coastal areas, and she's a great swimmer, we know.
Exactly, yeah. So
and you don't swim.
I don't swim, but I'm very happy to be by the seaside, because the seaside is one of those subjects that I can't get enough of. Because, inherent in the British seaside resort is a sort of feeling of decay. Places like Blackpool, probably the most deprived city in the UK. And yet seaside resorts are meant to be jolly and friendly and colourful and bright. And because my parents were bird watchers, we didn't go to the seaside resorts. We went to marshes and such like looking for birds. That was left out of my, childhood experience. So I'm catching up with it now. 55 years later, I still can't get enough seaside resorts.
And you still find it exquisitely exotic?
Yeah. Last week I went to Great Yarmouth. It's a resort that I like. I needed to get more pictures of it because I think it's quite an important one. It's probably, one of the most working class seaside resorts left in the UK. So I went there. Sadly, the weather wasn't great. That's what you expect in Britain. But it was interesting.
I think there's a great poignancy in your photography. People always talk about it being controversial. I don't see it at all. I think there's an incredible poignancy of people trying hard to enjoy themselves, sometimes under sort of terrible
against the odds.
Against all the odds, exactly. Yeah. And I wondered whether this idea about leisure time is something you subscribe to yourself, because I don't know, what do you do with your leisure time?
Well, I might watch a bit of telly.
Oh, you do? What kind of things do you watch?
Well, whatever's going, that's good. You never tire enough of BBC Two for documentaries. I watched last night this thing about the Jesus Army, which is a brilliant bit of exploration through documentary about what was going on. So I'm always game for that. And of course, you have TV dramas like Succession and such like. The quality of TV is now so good. It's a great pleasure to watch it. But yeah, really, I go on work trips, and Susie comes with me and she's on a holiday. So as long as she's near the sea, she's quite happy. And as long as I'm near the sea, I'm quite happy too. So it works out well.
So is that the success of your marriage?
I think it's one thing that we've been able to share, but for different reasons.
And maybe the other reason is that she's managed to get all your hoardings out of the house, all your ephemera.
Yes. So she was very happy that it came to the foundation. It all happened when I was away.
Yeah.
So first it went downstairs, and then secondly it came here. And now, that's right, she says she's got her house back again.
You're drawn to saturated colours, we know that, but you're drawn to a bit of kitsch. I'm interested in taste. Is there such a thing as good or bad taste?
Yeah, I think bad taste and good taste are very difficult to differentiate. For example, I did a project with the BBC called Signs of the Times, where they looked at people's houses, people's relationship, and the first programme was about couples who argue about taste. And it's a very class-ridden sort of thing, taste. It's very difficult to define. We all think we've got good taste and everyone else has got bad taste. So that is often the case. So
yes.
It's very open-ended, full of contradictions. and full of areas which, are potentially powerful to explore through photography or indeed writing.
Absolutely. I mean, as you say, class definition through what your curtains are doing.
Yeah.
Whether they're ruched or blinds or whatever. No, it's really, really fascinating. And when you look back on the England of these pictures of the 70s, are you prone to nostalgia?
I guess, I can't help myself, but yeah, it is quite an attractive thing. I at the same time, I'm always trying to think when I'm out photographing, what should I be photographing that's going to change? So in 20 years' time, it'll look quite different, or even, less time than that. So, for example, I've done a lot of people doing selfies with selfie sticks, and now selfie sticks have slowly disappeared. So I was very happy to have done a book about selfies, called Death by Selfie, in fact. And now selfie sticks have gone. That, to me, is funny. I like little things like that.
Yeah, I think that's right. Well, you documented some extraordinary trend that's now gone into the annals of history. Yes,
that's right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because you're watching and so closely. You're observing the world.
Yes, this
so
is true.
maybe you detect things before everybody else.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I did do a lot of work, like in the 80s, about things like supermarkets, hypermarkets. So I got that out of my system, and they were relatively new back in those decades. So I thought it was an interesting thing to explore. And documentary photographers are quite predictable in what they want to do. There's certain nostalgic-based things like the British sort of social class system. But at the same time, I'm very aware that certain things change, and I want to have those recorded as well before they go or before they change.
So what's your current obsession?
I don't know, really. I mean, really, at the moment, I'm just trying to enlarge my archive about things in Britain. So I keep going to things that I haven't gone to before, like an air show I went to this summer, going on the cruise with Cunard. That was something I hadn't done, which I thought I had to do. And I mean, it took me a long time to catch up with the whole phenomenon of cruising. And of course, there are many bigger boats now than the Cunard boats, which are completely crazy and kitsch. I should be on them as well.
I thought they were going to die a death in COVID and no one would ever go on them again. But
well,
no.
Tourism since COVID has gone completely bonkers.
Yeah.
And, I've been to Rome and Venice this year and last year, and they're busier and crazier than ever before. I've been to Rome many times, used to wander along to the Pantheon, go straight in, and now you have to, queue up for over an hour, and it costs €10 or whatever it is to go in there. So, how things have changed. So over-tourism is something I'm looking at. I try to go to places when they're absolutely at their utmost crowds.
Yeah,
so I've been to Barcelona this year, so I'm looking for those pictures where this is evident.
John and I were in Cornwall the other week, and I was sitting under the sign saying, "Don't feed the seagulls." And I was busy feeding seagulls chips. And he said, "That's a very Martin Parr vision of you sitting there."
Right.
So that must feel like something. And,
I guess.
Very Martin Parr, but it has entered our consciousness.
No, this is true, and I'm very happy for that to be the case.
Yeah. Well, Grayson Perry said it in the film, didn't he? He said that you have made us look at things in a different way. Or made us look at British society in a different way.
Right, yeah. No, I mean, Grayson was very generous about his comments about me. We've been friends and allies for the last 10, 15 years. So, he doesn't take these things too seriously either. So he's always got a great sense of humour. He understands how important humour is in the art world. And that's something I think, photographers need to get more of, because the world is crazy and funny. That's why my pictures are funny, if you call them funny, but because the world out there that I'm recording is funny. So how can I avoid that? But interestingly, I'm doing a show next year in Paris at the Jeu de Paume with Quentin Berjac, who's a very great curator. And this is going to be called Global Warning. And it's all the politics in my images that we've centered into one particular show where we look at different aspects of society. So I think the politics, which is in my work, but is often quite hidden, will be much more pronounced in this particular exhibition.
Oh, interesting.
This was his idea, which I went along with, and we're just about to put the book to press. And, I'm looking forward to seeing how that looks.
That'll be great. So when is that show?
It's the end of January. It opens at Jeu de Paume in Paris.
Very interesting. So you were talking about working with your wife on this last project, the cruise project. And I'm interested in how how often you work together and whether that's a good thing.
Well, we did the Nonconformist book together, where she was an integral part of my photography there. She even taught things like the Sunday school, despite her being an atheist, which is quite ironic, isn't it? And yeah, I mean, since then, she's often been with me and she's written. And luckily for the cruise, she was inspired enough as to what she saw to actually want to write. And obviously it only really works when she wants to write, rather than me encouraging or forcing her to write. And I was very happy with the text that he wrote, and many people have seen this, and it's a great bit of writing, So I'm delighted to have this opportunity to share it, just being published in The Guardian today. So by the time you watch this on your podcast, you can still look it up and look at Cruise Memories, whatever it's called.
So, Martin, you were mentioning your brush with mortality. Has it changed the way you photograph or your drive in any way?
I think, it really concentrates your mind on what's valuable to you, family, friends, and of course, work. So ever since my diagnosis, I've probably been working harder than ever before, really. And, last summer, this summer, I'm shooting a lot of pictures because there are certain things I want to get into the archive before I'm no longer able to do it.
So there's a sense of urgency, a time.
Yes, I guess so, yeah. And it makes you appreciate, the day-to-day things that we always take for granted. People always say this about cancer, it opens up your eyes, and it's one of the fringe benefits. There aren't many fringe benefits, apart from getting a blue badge. So you have to be grateful to these things when they happen.
And I suppose another benefit is that you can walk around with a Zimmer.
Yes.
And really, as Grayson also said in the film, it's become your camo. You can completely disappear into the background.
Yes, I can. And then I'm always at the front of every queue, like airport queues are history for me, because you always put at the very front of the queue. So there are some benefits to this cancer that I've got, which is called myeloma, by the way. It's a form of blood cancer.
Blood cancer, yes. Well, you look very well.
Thank you.
And you are bursting with energy. It's extraordinary, actually. But when you look back, are there things that you miss about the old days, about being younger, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, leaping around in the way that I did before obviously was great. There are certain things now, where it's sort of very busy, I couldn't really go to. I was once offered before COVID, I was offered a job to photograph the Euros and to go to every ground, but I couldn't do that now because, having to survive in quite a pushy atmosphere, I wouldn't be able to do it with my Zimmer. It's just not possible.
What do you think is going to happen next? What's your next big project?
Well, I'm not doing big projects. Well, apart from going to Laycock, I'm currently doing a commission for the National Trust in Laycock, which of course is the birthplace of photography, or the birthplace of the negative.
Yeah.
So I'm doing a portrait of contemporary Laycock. So I've done lots of portraits in the village. I'm going to all the main events that they have on during the summer. So that will be a nice exhibition and a book, which I'm going to do next year. So that's my only major project. Other than that, I'm filling in the gaps in my archive as best as I can.
The other thing I wanted to ask you was about the loneliness of being a photographer. Do you find it very lonely?
It has been, especially when you go away on your own and you're not with a journalist, which sometimes happens, or not with Susie. So yeah, but that's just part of it that I expect. But last week I was alone in Great Yarmouth because I wanted to go there, and it was fine. I'm quite happy just sort of toddling along, in my own time, doing the pace I want to do, eating when I want to eat, etc. So yeah, there are certain advantages to it.
I mean, all photographers are solitary in some way, but then you join Magnum, which is like a club, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And, it's quite difficult for me to get into Magnum because, led by Philip Jones-Griffiths, there was this anti-Parr feeling that many of the Magnum photographers, probably the more traditional ones, thought about. But eventually I got the 2/3 majority required to become a member. And, I've really enjoyed my time there, and I've met some great people, some great photographers. So it's not a thing I regret whatsoever. And I just like the idea of a cooperative, I guess. And that's one of the great things that Magnum can deliver.
And you were director there for a couple of years?
I was president, for 3.5 years, which is, something you have to try and do in Magnum if you've got the ability to do it, because some photographers in Magnum just haven't got the ability to be a president. So those
You were a very
good
one. You made a lot of money for them, didn't you?
Well,
you bought a lot of money
to
them.
I have over the years been one of their top earners, so that's good for me and good for Magnum, I guess, yeah. Very happy to share that income.
you have a nose for marketing and branding and making money. Is that something you're...
Well, I have been a very successful photographer. Yeah. I can't deny that. And the great thing is I'm able to reinvest this money that I've earned into the collection, into the foundation here to help keep it going. Because ultimately, we don't get any grants from any public bodies, because I hear people having to apply for their Arts Council grants. It's a terrible process. You have to work so hard. You have to change your goalposts every 6 months as they change. So I'm very happy to be entirely independent of that. So we do need to have a successful membership scheme, which we got, successful bookshop, charging for talks and for workshops. And then any money that's a shortfall, I have to just put in myself, which I'm very happy to do.
You're an obsessive collector. What's the last thing you bought?
Good question. I'm trying to think. I think surprisingly, some hex-clad saucepans. Hexclad make very good saucepans, and they sent me some, and I've gone and bought some more because I was so impressed with them.
Are you a chef? Are you a good cook?
No. I used to cook more, but now cooking is difficult for me because it means you have to stand up a lot, and I'm not good at standing up for long periods.
Well, you're very interested in food in your photography, aren't you?
Absolutely, yes. I love to eat well.
Well, okay, but let's say it's your last supper, Martin, God forbid. What would you imagine that you would be eating? I
think I would have... I love fish, so I think I'd have Jersey potatoes, asparagus, and turbot.
Turbot steamed or fried?
No, fried, I think, yeah.
And would you have a pudding?
I'd have some strawberries, I guess.
Okay, very healthy last supper.
Yeah.
And would you have your last supper, would you be surrounded by Martin Parr acolytes? Or
Not really. No. I don't rush to seek more of them. Yeah.
You'd be with your family.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And a few heroes who've influenced your life, if you could dredge them up, who would they be?
Yeah, I mean, people like Alan Bennett I've always loved. I've always saddened that I never got the chance to meet him, and now he's too old to really have a meaningful relationship with him. But he would be, if you like. And Tony Benn, a few classic sort of Englishmen that, I've always liked and respected.
So those two. Any women?
Gosh, who would I put in my... It's funny that they're men, isn't it? This is a good question. I'm going to have to think about it.
Okay, well, I might come back to it. Yeah. And then if we are... Yes. Oh, I know what I really want to know about you is I'm not sure that we know what your hidden talents are.
I probably haven't got many, really, apart from being a good organiser.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I'm lucky to have one talent, and I develop that as best I can. So I guess
you haven't got any other talent that's a surprising thing.
Not particularly, no.
You're not good at
I'm not even very good at poker, for example,
cross stitching,
which I play every Thursday.
Oh, you do?
When I'm in town, yeah.
Okay. Well, that's an interesting. Is that your guilty pleasure?
I guess so. Yeah, it's one of them.
Okay. What's the other one?
I thought you'd ask that, and I can't think of them. Diane Arbus, by the way, is my...
Okay. Other woman you'd have at your table.
Yes,
your last supper,
I'd love to have met her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was she an influence as a photographer on your work?
I think so, yeah, because during that time when we learnt from America with that whole generation of Winogrand, Friedlander, etc., she was part of that. And
William Eccleston,
really, yes, helped to define American photography in the 60s and 70s. And that influence came over here as well, of course.
Why don't you think photography in Britain is respected enough now, even now?
I guess there's this old feeling that, photography is just a craft and there's no real skill in it. And I think that goes back to the days of people like the Tate, them not taking it seriously. And I still think there's a sort of hangover from that. I mean, if you go to somewhere like France, where photography is so well respected, they have Paris Photo, the Arles Festival, they have all these great events, and you get photography taken very seriously indeed. And I'm very happy to be probably more popular in France than I am in the UK. So a lot of my sales for prints, which is another method I can help survive, is done by my French dealer. She's very effective.
And with all this energy that you're expending, are you early to bedder or a
Not
night
particularly.
owl?
I mean, I usually watch the news and then go to bed after that. So 10:30, 11.
Okay, and
is that early or late? I don't know.
I think that's early-ish.
Early-ish?
Ish, yes.
Right.
And what time do you wake up?
You often wake up at 5.
Wow.
But I don't necessarily get up.
Yeah.
And then, I'm usually up by 8. I used to get up much earlier before COVID and before my cancer, but now I seem to enjoy a bit more sleep.
And when you get up, what's the first thing you do?
Have a cup of tea.
PG tips?
No, Yorkshire.
And finally, Martin, if you were going to write your epitaph, what would it be?
He worked hard. How about that?
That's perfect. And that's certainly true, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure talking to you, and I could go on much longer.
Thank you.
That brings us to the end of today's conversation. If you've enjoyed it, do explore more episodes of The Third Act, either in your favourite podcast app or by searching for The Third Act podcast on Google. And if there's someone you think would enjoy what you've heard today, please do let them know about the show. This episode was produced by Pete Norton and made possible by Auriens, the gold standard in later living. I'm Catherine Fairweather, and you've been listening to The Third Act.